Hey, what's up? Hello everyone, welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and today we have something very fun to do. We are now in the month of July, so that means we are halfway through the year of 2023, which feels crazy. I mean, it felt like it was just February yesterday. But with that being said, it means it's time for our halfway awards. So before we dive into Matt and myself's picks, everyone let us know down below what are some of your favorite movies of the year and what categories you would give them awards. If you like what we have to say or think we're somewhat entertaining, considering dropping a subscription, a like, a comment, all that stuff. It really helps the channel grow. So, Matt, we're going to start off with our 10 favorite movies of the year so far. And we're going to, alternate back and forth. So why don't you kick us off with your number 10 of the year so far?
Of course, and for my number 10 favorite movie of the year, I'm going with the Icelandic film Godland. This one is distributed by Janus Films of the Criterion Collection, and it really flew under the radar, but what this is a beautiful film, an examination of faith. It's about a priest who travels across Iceland to build a remote church, and the camera work is as stunning as you might imagine it to be. This premiered back in 2022, and I said all year long this was the better beautiful Icelandic locations movie, right against The Northman.
And on the flip side, my number 10 movie is one that got a lot of buzz when it first came out, and it seems to have fallen off the radar just a little bit, but that does not mean that it's not a great movie still, and that is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This is one I think can connect to people of all ages, of all genders. It's so charming, it's so fun, it's so engaging. It's one that you can watch with your friends and with your family and get a lot of discussion sparking out of it. So for me, that is my number 10.
At number 9, I'm going to be taking Ben Affleck's Air, a movie that really surprised me. I had read the script before watching the movie and I was not impressed, but I was very impressed by the humor, the positive energy that was radiating off of this movie. It was inspirational. It made me want to pump my fist in the air, and the performances are really good from this wonderful ensemble, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Air is a great movie and my number 9 pick so far.
You talk about a great ensemble. My number 9 pick has that as well. Maybe not as good, but still, pretty engaging, and that's Knock at the Cabin from M. Night Shyamalan. I fell for this movie. I was just so gripped to the edge of my seat, and for a thriller, that means it accomplished its goal. Is it a perfect movie? Not at all, but it's one that's very fun and engaging while you're watching it.
At number 8, I'm taking the French film The Five Devils, another film that some of you out there probably haven't seen or maybe heard of. This is a wonderful, witchy fantasy movie about a young girl who discovers that she can travel through time by smelling different objects. Weird premise, very cool execution, as she uses different scents to dive into her family's past and discover what happened with her mother, her father, and her mysterious aunt. It leaves you guessing what is going to happen all the way to the end, and like I said, it's got this kind of very fun, witchy, supernatural, paranormal vibe to it that's very, very intriguing.
While my number 8 doesn't have a paranormal vibe to it, it does keep you guessing all the way to the end, and that is Missing. I was a sucker for Searching back when that came out. It was one of my favorites of the year. Then Storm Reid is someone who's had a very interesting career so far, and I think this is her best performance to date. I thought that the script here, while at times was a little messy, it, just like Knock at the Cabin, kept me on the edge of my seat, and I think where it all ended up at was very out of left field, which at first I was kind of mixed on it, but the more I think about this movie, the more that I do like the direction it went to. So Missing, here's your shout out right here.
Next up at number 7 is a little Canadian indie. This is a film that hasn't even released in the States yet. That should be happening very soon, I hope, and that is Chandler Levack's movie, I Like Movies. Basically, anyone with a Letterboxd account is going to really dig this film. It's a story about a 17-year-old film bro in the early 2000s who wants to go and become a filmmaker in New York City, but for now he's stuck in Toronto, and it's about him learning how to not be a shitty film bro. It's a very funny movie. It echoes a lot of the best coming-of-age comedies of the 2000s and 90s, and when it releases in the States, y'all better check it out, and if you're in Canada, rent it now on digital.
I'm upset because I've heard you rave about this movie before, and it was one of the Regal mystery movies while I was gone on work trips, so I didn't get the chance to see it, but hopefully when it does come out, I can venture my way to the theater for that one. But speaking about a movie, or whatever you really want to label this as, I didn't get to see this in the theater. I watched this at home on HBO Max, and that is The Weekend Live at SoFi. Yeah, it's a recorded concert, but sometimes those can be considered documentaries, and that's what I'm doing here because it was very fun, very engaging. I mean, I was there, not at SoFi, but at another stop on this tour, and I felt like it very much grasped the feelings that I had while inside the stadium and put them to screen. So you could call this cheating, you could call this not, but I want to give a shout out here because it was a very fun viewing experience for me on my couch.
At number 6, I'm gonna take Rice Boy Sleeps, another Canadian movie. I promise I'm not biased to my country. There's a lot of bad Canadian films. There just happens to be a lot of really good ones out right now. Rice Boy Sleeps is, honest in my mind, a better version of Minari. This is about a Korean immigrant family, and it's about some of the challenges that this family has as they settle into a new life. And we follow the kid as he grows up over many, many years, as he deals with masculinity, as he deals with a loss of culture. This is a beautiful film. It's shot in a lot of long takes, and it is actually out in the States now, so you can rent it, go and watch it. It's a great movie with some amazing performances.
I haven't seen it yet, but I will go watch it because you sold me very well on that. A movie I don't really need to sell you on or sell anyone out there one because everyone's probably seen this if they actually wanted to, but that is Disney's The Little Mermaid. I've talked about it many times on the show. I was very much anticipating this film, and it lived up to everything I wanted and more. I wasn't really a fan of the animated version back in the day. Even when I watched it as a kid, I was like, it's cool, but it's not great. Ariel has some great songs, but as a character, she doesn't really have much going for her. Eric is just a very plain prince and so on and so forth, but I really adore how this movie gave both of them life, both of them characters, and the romance between them was very much felt through the screen, as well as some very interesting takes on songs that maybe don't always work, but definitely can't say they're just copying what they did in the animated version. I mean, Scuttlebutt, I wish this could get an Oscar nomination, but it's not, because how funny would that be if Scuttlebutt was performed at the Oscars next year?
At number 5, I'm gonna take, guess what? Another Canadian movie. I promise, guys, I'm not biased. I promise. There's just good Canadian movies this year, because I'm taking Blackberry, which is a hilarious take on the business movie that we're seeing so much of. There's a Flaming Hot Cheetos movie this year, a Tetris movie. Blackberry is that type of movie, but it's also a satire of that type of movie. It follows the same sort of building an empire formula that The Social Network took, except this movie is about how a company was built up to be the biggest in the world and then failed and went back to being nothing at all. And it boasts what I think is the best performance, hands down, this year from Glenn Howerton, starring as the billionaire Jim Balsley. And he makes this character into this ferocious, terrifying shark, while also still being absolutely hilarious. It's a performance that if I could make one wish right now, it would be that he wins an Oscar this year.
Once I watch it, we'll have a full review on this channel, so definitely consider dropping a subscription if you want to hear us talk about Blackberry, but a movie that a lot of people want to talk about and a lot of people have talked about, and I will do so right here, because at my number 5 spot I have Past Lives. This is one where I watched it and I had really no clue what I was getting myself into. I heard the raise out of Sundance and I kind of stayed away from all promotional material. I think I saw the trailer one time in front of Beau Was Afraid, so I kind of went in with next to knowing nothing, and I have to say I really enjoyed what I got. By the end of the film, I think I got what they were trying to say. I think the romance here is done excellent through whatever angle you want to look at it from. We have a great acting ensemble, and you talk about Oscars for Glenn Howerton, I would say at least get my man Uteo in for a supporting actor or a lead actor nomination, because he's by far the standout acting performance in Past Lives.
My controversial take here is that Past Lives isn't in my top 10. Sorry. My number 4 pick here is my first documentary and my only documentary on the board. That is 20 Days in Mariupol. This is a Sundance documentary about the invasion in Ukraine. It has some of the most harrowing images that you will ever see on screen. I think that this is one of the most important and essential films of this decade so far. It is journalism and it is not easy to watch, but that is why it must be watched.
Well, for a little bit of whiplash, for my number 4 pick, Ben Affleck's Air lands here. This, I think, is one of Ben Affleck's best. I feel like it really hits every beat that you want. It's got fun, energetic dialogue scenes. Everyone in this ensemble is on their A game. You could pick a handful of different people and say they had the stand-up performance. Some people have said Viola Davis. Some people have said Matt Damon. Some people even even say Ben Affleck, and I don't think you can go wrong with anyone in this movie. It's one that I feel like will be insanely rewatchable every time you put it on, and it will just be a fun movie for long time from right now, and I hope it's not forgotten by the time we get to the end of the year.
At number 3, I'm taking Rye Lane, one of the earliest movies that I saw this year that just blew me away and just left me wanting to go back for more immediately. This is a colorful, hilarious, heartwarming, inspirational rom-com. It is a wonderful piece of work and a stunning directorial debut that leaves me just wanting to see everything that Rain Allen Miller does next.
Oh, I have to applaud you for that. That's a great pick. We don't have many in common, but we do have that one in common. But at my number 3, I have another rom-com, just this one's in the animation field, and that is Pixar's Elemental. This is one of the most beautiful animated movies of the year. It's not the most beautiful, but it's one of the most beautiful animated movies. I just really dug the romance that's going on in this movie, and I felt like it was very well paced. Like, this movie started, it ended, I was like, wow, I could have gone for a lot more, and I just really love a lot of what this movie has to say from a variety of different things, and I think that we have a very nice discussion on this movie where we go into more detail about it. I don't want to ramble here, but Elemental has been one of my favorite movie theater experiences of the year overall.
At my number 2, I'm taking a bit of a controversial pick here, because a lot of people are going to say Beau is Afraid was a bit of a letdown. I'm going to say it was everything I wanted and more. I think this is the best thing that Ari Aster has done. I cannot believe they let him get away with making this movie. I've seen it multiple times in theaters, and there's so much to uncover here. Thematically, narratively, Joaquin Phoenix gives one of the best performances of the year, second only to Glenn Howerton in Blackberry, and I have no idea how, for one thing, how they came up with this, and another thing, how they made it. How did no one stop this along the way? It is insane that this movie is allowed to exist.
I can't knock you for that. While I'm someone who wasn't a big fan of Beau is Afraid, you let me have Babylon last year, so I'll let you have Beau is Afraid this year. But at my number 2, I have a movie that you just raved about a few moments ago, and that is Rye Lane. Everything you said, I feel that 100%. It just nails the charisma and the energy that you want from a movie like this, and it's one movie, I've said it a few times with my list, but this is insanely rewatchable. I've seen it 3 times already, and it never loses a beat each time. Both leads in this movie offer very different sides of the spectrum of what you would want out of a protagonist in a romantic comedy, and I think they just deliver on every mark. Random cast of characters that they interact with throughout this very fast-paced, under 90-minute movie. Everyone is so memorable and it's so energetic, and you just leave this movie with so many quotables. But if we have to talk about one movie that just dominated the year in terms of both of us and a lot of people out there that included quotables, included good animation, included just everything that you want from a movie, we both have the same number 1. So Matt, why don't you take it away? What is our favorite movie of 2023 so far?
So far, our favorite movie of 2023, and personally, this is likely to remain my favorite movie for the rest of the year, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is the rare case where you have a first movie in a series that comes out and it's revolutionary and it blows everyone's minds and it just sets the standard for animation so insanely high, sets the standard for superhero movies so insanely high, and you think to yourself, there's no way they can top this. And then Across the Spider-Verse comes out, and not only does it top the first one, it leaves it in the dust. Across the Spider-Verse isn't just a step up. This is in a whole other league. This film is operating on a different plane of existence from anything else in theaters right now. I think I might like it more than Everything Ever All at Once when it comes to multiverse movies. This is a stunning achievement from all different aspects when we look at the animation quality, the music, the writing, which is so sharp and funny. It has brilliant cinematography and lighting design choices. The production design is stunning in every single place we go to. The way that the animation styles mix is incredible. This film gets better and better on rewatches, and I'm sure it's going to keep getting better through rewatches for me. I'm probably going to go back and see it again this week because I'm just dying to get more Spider-Verse. I hope that this can be in Best Picture, and I hope that it has a winning shot in multiple categories. That's why it's my number 1 of the year, and it's probably going to stay that way.
Well, speaking of multiple categories, what we're going to do from here on out for the rest of this episode is go category by category for all what the Oscars have, plus more, by giving a shout out to various movies. The only rule is we only can mention a movie 1 time per person. So example, we both love Spider-Verse. However, we can only nominate Spider-Verse for 1 specific category. So I will kick things off in Best Director, where I am nominating Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse because this whole movie comes down to the trio of directors' creative and artistic visions. Yes, there's so many elements coming in here, but who is spearheading and leading the charge there? It is the directors. There's so many things you can talk about this movie. It could be the animation style, the score, the editing, the writing, the vocal performances. The directors are the ones who help all that come to fruition.
My directing pick, it was really hard to find one category for this movie, but it's gonna be Beau is Afraid. Ari Aster's vision here was what made this movie so insane. His vision is what brings the whole thing together. Now, in Best Lead Actor, I'm gonna go with what I think is the best casting of the year, and that is Isaiah Lettinen for I Like Movies. He is perfect in this role. He just embodies this character, and how much you hate and love him, you want him to be better. I feel like we all have a friend like this, someone that you just think is the worst, but you keep going back to them because you want them to be good. You know deep down that they are good, and that's how I feel with this character. Beautiful performance.
I mean, I've had a load of discussions here on this channel about my issues with Beau is Afraid, but that is not with Joaquin Phoenix, because he is a standout in this role, and regardless of my thoughts on the movie, I want him in the Oscar race. I want him in any acting category race all season long, because he is a force. He delivers everything that you want from this character, and at times with a messy plot, to me at least, he very much elevates it and keeps you engaged throughout this long, tumultuous runtime. But Joaquin Phoenix, he can do no wrong, and this is just another example of that. To carry that over into Best Lead Actress, we have someone in a movie that somewhat controversial, shouldn't it be, but Halle Bailey in The Little Mermaid. She delivers everything I want in this role. She brings so much life, so much joy, and so much charisma to Ariel. She has the voice of an angel, as well as, I think, very good acting skills. I can't wait to see put on in other films that come out throughout the rest of the year, because she's having a big year. She's attached to like 3 or 4 movies, including The Color Purple. So Little Mermaid's a great start. I can't wait to see what the rest of the year has for Miss Halle.
I'm going to be taking Lily McInerney for Palm Trees and Power Lines. This is a bit of an underrated movie. It played at Sundance last year, and her performance in this film is so heartbreaking. It's basically the other end of Red Rocket. It follows a young woman who ends up in a bit of a sticky situation with an older man who takes advantage of her, and watching her heartbreak, watching her go through this experience is so difficult, but her performance is so endearing, so wonderful. Now, in supporting actor, I gotta take my man Glenn Howerton. Glenn Howerton in Blackberry. This is the most unbelievably fiery performance of the year. It's crazy that you can be laughing at everything he does, but also kind of scared. He feels like he could just fly off the chain and kill someone at any time. That's how angry he is. That's how fierce he is in this role. Oh my god. Dylan, I can't wait for you to see this.
My pick is Dave Bautista in Knock at the Cabin. I mean, there's been so many things said about this particular role for Bautista, and I feel like he really just knocked it out of the park. He's my favorite wrestler turned actor. I mean, every role he's in, he always delivers what you want, whether it's in the Guardians movies. Honestly, this supporting actor role is just Dave Bautista for year 2023. He's had 2 movies, he's knocked out on both movies, and been the star of the show. Speaking of star of the show, supporting actress, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Rachel McAdams. She adds so much life, so much connectivity, and you feel loved by her, even though like she's not your mom. You feel with Margaret that her mom really does care about her, and I'm just very happy that this movie got to see the light of day. She got casted, and hopefully, as we've said numerous times, so every time we talk about this movie, she stays in the award season race.
I'm going to be taking Choi Sung-yoon for Rice Boy Sleeps. She plays the mother role, and it's such a tender, very soft performance. I don't want to spoil what happens in this movie, but it's heartbreaking to watch her go through the events of this film. So now we're going to go over to original screenplay, where my pick here is Rye Lane. This is one of the sharpest screenplays that I've seen in a very long time. It is a wonderful romantic comedy that has zinger after zinger after zinger. Maybe the strengths of this movie really come from the direction, but at the same time, my god, that screenplay is strong as well. There's so many categories I'd love to give this a shout out in, but if we're limiting ourselves to one, this fits. This makes sense to me.
So of original screenplay, I am going with Air. As I mentioned before when I talked about it in my top 10 movies of the year so far, its script is so good. It's so funny. It's informative. You learn a lot about the Jordan shoe brand and Nike as a whole. Even as someone who's super into basketball and the history of it, there's stuff I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even really realize that. It doesn't feel like there's any dull moments in this movie. Every moment packs a big punch. Air just knows what to be in the right moment. Moving over to adapted screenplay, this is a category where it's a little fun because our depth here at the year so far is kind of light, and I used Across the Spider-Verse and director. So here for adapted screenplay, I'm giving a little bit of MCU love. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I thought that it was a very fitting conclusion for these characters that we've come to love over the last, it feels like almost 10 years. And there's some minor issues with the movie that we did talk about here on the channel, but overall the script was not where some of those issues came from. And I just really like how a lot of these character stories were wrapped up.
My adapted screenplay pick is also, I'm reaching a little bit down in my list. I've already used Spider-Man, I've already used Blackberry, so I guess I'm going for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is a lovely movie with a very sensitive screenplay. I love how Kelly Freeman Craig really balances the troubles and struggles of growing up with the religious troubles that Margaret is going through the movie. I think it was very sensitively handled. Now for best ensemble, I'm gonna pick Air. This is one where you could mention any number of supporting actors in this movie as a standout. To me, I'd say Jason Bateman. Other people might say Chris Tucker, or what's the name of the guy, the agent who yells on the phone? What's his name?
Chris Messina.
People mention him a lot as a standout as well. Viola Davis, Matt Damon. You could mention anyone in this cast and say that they are your standout.
Give me a great, humongous, wide, every actor they can think of ensemble, and that is Asteroid City. This is a movie that it's very hard to pick who your favorite is, and that's because everyone's delivering such a good performance. They could be wacky, they could be crazy, they could be dramatic, they could be intensive. You have so many actors delivering so many different styles of performance, and I just think that's what makes a great ensemble. Carrying over to just a lot, all at once, we have Best Cinematography, and I am going John Wick Chapter 4. And there's a lot of things you could say about this movie. You could say the stunts, you could say the editing, the sound. Cinematography is where I think this movie reigns biggest and true. It's so bright, it's so vibrant, while also pulling off some of those darker tones. Every scene feels like it's very perfectly lit to the tone that you're supposed to feel. And I mean, those POV ceiling shots that we get during that final fight sequence and so many long takes, I'm a sucker for all of that in John Wick 4.
I'll be taking Godland here. As I mentioned earlier, this is an Icelandic film, and it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. It's really easy to have good cinematography when you're shooting somewhere as beautiful as Iceland, but this movie looks incredible. Highly recommend you check it out. Now we're moving over to Best Editing, where I'm going to pick a documentary, and that is 20 Days in Mariupol. As I talked about a little bit earlier, this is a historical document. It is an important film. It is hard to turn away from. The way that this is pieced together to form a very coherent, cohesive, comprehensive sequence of events through the 20 days of the Russian invasion. It doesn't outstay its welcome. It gives you the important points, and it makes it tense. It shows you the gravity of the situation, and the editing is used to really show how the progress of this invasion happened so quickly.
But on the flip side, I'm going with a movie that very much relies on its editing, because without its editing, this movie couldn't work at all, and that is Missing, because this movie takes place completely through a computer screen. Just like Searching, this movie can't exist without a great editor. Over in animated, I mean, we've both used Spider-Verse so far, so it can't be here, so we're gonna have some interesting picks. But I really adore another animated movie that came out this year, and that is Pixar's Elemental. If you made it this far in the video, you already heard me rave about it at my number 3 slot above.
Well, I wish I could say it was Nimona, but I haven't seen Nimona yet. Nimona would probably be my pick here, because I've heard great things. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So instead, I'm gonna take the Super Mario Bros. Movie. This isn't a bargain bin pick for me. I really liked this movie. It has some of the best animation that I've ever seen. It's so incredibly detailed, well lit. It is a gorgeous looking movie. Also, it just made me feel warm feelings. I liked it. It was very fun. And yes, I do wish I could put Nimona here, but for now, it's gonna be the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Nimona might pass it very soon. Now let's move over to documentary. I've already given you my documentary in my top 10, which was 20 Days in Mariupol, so instead, I'm gonna go to my next favorite documentary, and that is Once Upon a Time in Uganda. This is a film about filmmaking. It tells the story of Wakaliwood, which is a renegade group of action filmmakers from Kampala, Uganda. This team of filmmakers lives in a slum in Kampala. They have access to the internet like one day every single week, but they love action movies. They have taught themselves kung fu, and they make the most kick-ass, low-budget action movies you can think of. So this tells their story and how they kind of became these international cult sensations. If you haven't seen Who Killed Captain Alex, that's what this movie's about, and it's a wonderful documentary.
For these next two categories, I'm kind of cheating a little bit because some people will probably say these are both ineligible, but here in Fantasy Filmball, we make our own rules. So in Best Documentary, I have The Weekend Live at SoFi because this is the only considered documentary I've watched all year. Thought it was very good. It encapsulated the vibe of what it was like to actually be there. Then in Best International Feature, using the Golden Globe rules, I can put Past Lives here by default because I can't wait to watch more international movies. However, the Regal where I'm at doesn't usually stock a lot of them, and most of the bigger name ones have not come out yet this year.
I probably could put a few movies here. In fact, I mentioned The Five Devils in my top 10, and I was thinking about putting that here, but I've already talked about The Five Devils, so now's my sneaky time to say that I've seen Hirokazu Korieda's Monster, and it's really good. It's very good, it's very sweet, it's mysterious, the way it unravels itself is really interesting. I can't wait for everyone else to see this year. It is a huge step up from Broker. For next category, Best Original Score, I have to take the classic. That is John Williams for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Some might say he's just redoing the same score, but here's the thing that I found with this. It's not just the main theme. That's not all this score is. The textures, the different atmospheres, the leitmotifs that John Williams layers in here. When I was watching this movie, I spent most of it focusing on how much work John Williams is doing to save the entire movie.
While I would love to put 1001 and Tiana Taylor up in my Best Leading Actress, I couldn't really find another spot for The Little Mermaid and Halle Bailey. So 1001 is here for score because Gary Gunn has such an infectious and such a lovely and soothing score. While it's not to the quality of Nicholas Bertel's If Beale Street Could Talk, it reminds me of that score in a lot of ways, and the feelings and the thoughts that it provokes out of me. It's very warm, it's very comforting, and this is a score that I think very much stands on its own while also working wonders for the movie that it's in. Carrying us over from score, normally we would talk about songs here, but you know, we're only like halfway through the year and there hasn't been a lot of original songs, and most of the songs that really stick out to us have been in movies that we talked about in other categories. So best sounds, I mean, we had a few music movies come out, but one of them stands head and shoulders above the rest, and that is Chevalier. There's a lot of things we could recommend this movie for in these categories, but its sound is so impeccable, it's so marvelous, and it really just infuses you into this story and into this world that we see before us.
My sound pick is maybe going to make some people roll their eyes. Transformers Rise of the Beasts. There's a lot of things you can say about this movie, a lot of things this movie does not do well, but you can't knock the Transformers series for its sound design. The sound effects here are incredibly well done. There's just a very interesting meshing of sounds with the cars, with the robots, with the explosions, with the animals. There's so much going on here, and while the movie may be something, the sound design is very, very well done. I see why this series always got sound design nominations for the first 3 movies. For the next category, we're going over to production design, and I'm going to take Asteroid City here. What Wes Anderson did with models, miniatures, and building an entire desert town. Production design is what he does best, and he is doing it incredibly well here.
Talked about Rylan a bunch. This is where I'm throwing it a bone. Production design, because yes, the acting's great. Yes, the script's great. Yes, the direction's great. Yes, the costume design is eye-popping, but so is the production design. All that other stuff would not work as well as it does if you were not placed in this city and how inviting and warm it all feels, regardless of what situation you find our leads in. The production around them, the scenes, the elements, they all come together to make something very beautiful, something very grand. And I especially love the scenes where it turns into a play and it flips its production design on top of its head and adds something very chaotic and very comedic to add a whole new element to this movie. And speaking of comedic and a whole new element and just way out of left field, costume design, you talked about your sound nomination, rolling eyes. I'll do this here. White Man Can't Jump. This movie's ass, but Jack Harlow has drip in this movie, so there we go. See, you can set bad movies aside when they have really good technical elements, because White Man Can't Jump, your costume designer deserves a raise, because that very much carried the whole movie for me.
I'm gonna take Chevalier. We're talking about drip. Let's go Renaissance drip, because my lord, the costumes in this are incredible. Period pieces always outdo themselves with this. It's kind of like a cheat code to just name any random period piece right here. If I could, I'd probably say the trailer for Poor Things. You know, let's stick to things we've seen. Chevalier has great costume design. And for the next category, makeup and hairstyling, I have to go Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. What an achievement. My lord, there is so much makeup in this movie, and all of it is just incredible. There's gore makeup, there is alien makeup. The work that they do to blend CGI and practical effects in the makeup is insane. They have an entire planet where everyone is like a furry creature, and it's all practical makeup. That's nuts.
Talk about gore makeup and horror makeup. Evil Dead Rise does that to a T. I heard somewhere out there this movie used one of the most, if not the most, all-time fake blood. You can really see it, and it's very much felt in the movie. I think it's a very fun movie. And moving over to visual effects, a movie that maybe a lot of people wouldn't say is very fun, but I had a good time with it. But it's one highlight for me is I'm a sucker for de-aging if it's done right. Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, the de-aging here. Harrison Ford, he looks young. It's just when he speaks, he doesn't sound young, but he looks young. So props where props is due.
I'm going to be taking Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves here. This one has such creative visual effects. It's not just CGI, it's a blending of CGI, practical, and the way these effects are used is so interesting. There's one sequence in this movie where it's just an extended long take where the CGI moves us through a collection of practical sets in this giant chase scene, and it is incredible work. This movie looks like it had a much bigger budget than it did. And finishing us off, we're going to our stunts and choreography category, where I'm going to pick John Wick Chapter 4. It has great fight scenes, great stunt sequences. The choreography in this movie is insane, as is the work from every single stunt person on the film.
I ran out of stuff here. I already used John Wick. I just realized as we were recording here, Mission Impossible technically is not first half of the year. It's second half of the year, so that can't be here.
I'd say.
And Creed 3 has decent stunts, but they're not awesome. I'm going wild. I'm going out there. This is fun. This is crazy. I'm going Infinity Pool. Well, it doesn't really have hand-to-hand combat stunts. Alexander Skarsgård, he has a scene where he's on the ground, and for that, I want to give him some stunt love because, you know, it takes a lot to do what he did in that scene, and as far as I know, he didn't have a stunt double. There was not a body replacement, and he did some crazy stuff, so, you know, shout out to you.
Yeah, you could also give it the stunt award for the scene on the beach. I don't know if you had a stunt double for that one. Now, is there any film here that you didn't get to shout out that you'd like to give a quick shout out that just didn't fit into your list? Because for me, I didn't mention Past Lives. I couldn't figure out how to put Past Lives in there without shafting something else. I would have loved to say Yu Teo for Best Actor. I would have loved to give it the Screenplay prize, but it didn't really fit anywhere outside of those two categories.
Looking at least at my letterbox at my top movies of the year that I did not place here, I mean, there's Scream 6, Super Mario Brothers, No Hard Feelings, but I want to give a shout out to The Pope's Exorcist. This movie's not great. Russell Crowe's doing Russell Crowe stuff, and when Russell Crowe gets to be crazy and kooky, it's always a fun time, and there's like 3 different sequences where he's riding a moped, but Russell Crowe's Russell Crowe, so it's just very funny in that moment. So if you ever are like on an airplane or you need like an hour and a half to kill, throw in The Pope's Exorcist, you won't have a bad time.
Now that we're at the end of our first half of the year favorites list, let's talk about what comes next. We're going to give our top 5 most anticipated movies of the year.
Cool. So I'm going to have a few honorable mentions. I couldn't find space for these in my 5, but, you know, they're worth a shout. We have Poor Things, Yorgos Lanthimos, Emma Stone. We talked about this movie a lot. It looks really cool. Then we have 2 horror movies where they don't make the list, but I'm really excited to see what they have. That's Saw X and Five Nights at Freddy's. At minimum, they'll be entertaining. So at my number 5, I have Napoleon, and I'm a sucker for Napoleon. He was one of my first things that really got me into history and got me into learning. I was in like elementary school learning about Napoleon in my free time because I thought it was fun. So I'm really excited to see what this movie actually dives into. Joaquin Phoenix is in it. It's directed by Ridley Scott. He's got an interesting track record. A trailer for this movie just came out where we will have a trailer reaction for it sometime in the next week. So so more thoughts to come then.
At my number 5 slot, I'm going with my best picture pick, The Color Purple. This, for me, is a highly anticipated movie because I love the music from this musical, and I'm just a sucker for movie musicals overall. This looks incredibly promising, and it's one that I'm going to be waiting for on opening day. I'm going to be there right away.
Well, speaking of being there opening day right away, my number 4 is just that because I love sports, I love romance, I love Luca Guadagnino, and I love Zendaya. So Challengers is right up my alley. I can't wait for this one to come. I don't even care if this is an Oscar player or not. This movie looks so fun. It looks so energetic. I know that you didn't like the screenplay, but you said that about Air 2, and Air surprised you a little bit. So who knows? Maybe Challengers can be that as well. Luca's been on a roll for me. Bones and All is one of my favorites of last year. Call Me By Your Name was great, and Suspiria is still haunting my mind, so I can't wait to see what he presents with Challengers.
At number 4, I have The Zone of Interest. This sounds like a haunting piece of art. It got rave reviews out of the Cannes Film Festival, and it just sounds to me like the most fascinating artistic experiment of the year.
At my number 3, we have a movie that you just talked about, Zone of Interest. It premiered at Cannes. My number 3 did as well. Martin Scorsese, Killers of the Flower Moon. In fact, we just got a brand new second trailer for this movie, which is crazy that this movie is still so far away. And we have 2 full-length trailers, but this new trailer has a very interesting score to me. It could just be trailer mix, but it also could have like hints of the real score. My hype is just rising and rising for Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, it does look great. That said, it's not in my top 5. I think it's my number 6 pick, actually, so it could have been here instead of The Color Purple, but I thought The Color Purple was a little bit of a different pick, a little bit of a different choice. At my number 3, I'm gonna go with an obvious pick here. This wasn't that high until the second trailer of this movie came out, and that's Dune Part 2. I think it looks better than the first one. The first trailer didn't fully sell me. The second trailer, I'm in. Thinking back to the first movie, when those trailers came out, I was like, it's not everything I hoped it would be. You know, it looks really good, but there's something missing here. I really love the first movie, but I still feel that, like, there was something epic that wasn't there. This trailer, ooh, it's promising the epic that I wanted. It's promising everything I wanted. And so if this movie delivers on what that trailer's given me, ooh, baby boy, this is going to be a good one.
These movies, you can't pull them away from each other. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, Greta Gerwig's Barbie, same release date. 2 awesome, spectacular movies. I have a shirt. It's on the way. I'm not wearing it now, but our next video when we talk about these movies, I'll be wearing it. I won't spoil what it is quite just yet, but I can't wait to watch both these movies on the same day, and I can't wait to watch both these movies as many times as possible because they both look like they'll be in my top 10, if not my top 5s for the year.
I mean, hey, if you watch them back to back, it could technically be one movie. The Barbenheimer Ultimate Experience right there, the double bill. Ooh. At my number 2, I have to take Hayao Miyazaki's How Do You Live? As we're recording this, oh my god, as we're recording this, there might be reactions out because it premieres on July 14th, and we're recording this on July 13th. So we're going to know very soon how this is. But Hayao Miyazaki means so much to me. My Neighbor Totoro was my childhood movie. This movie is going to be his final work. It's his swan song. He is 82 years old. And this is his final goodbye to the world of art. Even if it's not an Oscar player, this movie is going to be probably the most meaningful movie of the year for me.
I mean, you talk about for Oppenheimer and Barbie, a double feature. I want a double feature of Dune, and I want to make it a triple feature when Messiah comes out because Dune Part 2 looks like it's going to be the greatest thing of all time. And I know that's a very hyperbolic statement, but like that second trailer was perfection. It hits everything that you want. It teases just enough without giving you too much. I can't wait for this movie to come out. I can't wait to do what I did for Avatar last year, where I watched the first movie the night before, and then I wake up to go watch the new one. Dune, November, it will be here before I know it.
My top slot is something that I never thought I would have said a few months ago, but it's Poor Things. Poor Things, my god, these trailers have sold me 110%. How Do You Live might be my number 1 if there was a trailer out, but holy shit, Poor Things. What a trailer. What a gorgeous looking movie. This is one where I know enough of the type of movies that I like, And I know when I see this trailer, this looks like 10 other movies that are in my top 50 films of all time. So when I see this, I look at that and go, yeah, that looks like an instant addition to my favorite movies. So that's why it's my number 1 of the year. It's right up my alley. It's everything I want and more.
I mean, yeah, that Poor Things trailer looks great to me. It just missed my list. It was at number 6. But everyone out there, this was a very long episode. So if you made it this far, that means you had to, at least enjoy something that we had to say. So let us know down below, what are some of your most anticipated movies for next year? Or what are some of your, favorites so far in a specific category? It could be Ryan Lane. It could be Guardians. It could be anything. There's been so many great movies that come out this year so far. But as always, consider dropping a like, a subscription. We have new stuff each and every day. But until then, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.